What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another video, and today we're going to be doing the Liurnia of the Lakes guide, part 1. We've got more than a few things to cover with this one. Now, starting point's going to be lake-facing cliffs for this video, but on that note, like I said before, we've got a whole lot to cover with this one, so let's get straight into it. Just next to that Lost Grace at the very beginning, you may notice a blind woman over here. We'll need to exhaust the dialogue with her and give her a Shabriru grape. If she's not here, you may need to do the blind girl's quest line over at the Castle Morn area in Limgrave. Head over to my guide of Limgrave in order to get that one done. But just past her, over to our left, is going to be a Church of Miracle with a guy sitting inside of here that's been pretty much an outcast of the RYA'S Academy. What you'll need to do is essentially just exhaust his dialogue, be able to buy up a couple of spells from him. Over here on our right, we will get an Academy spell as well, but for his side quest line, you'll need to go inside the Academy of RYA'S and get him a Glintstone key. Academy Glintstone key, I believe it was. I've got that in another guide for the Academy of RYA'S as well. I have these linked down in the description below. But essentially, in that first starting area, you know, we could immediately jump into 2 side quest lines, and with the blind girl, we'll almost come to full completion with her side quest throughout this guide. Now, the rest of her side quest will be dealt with inside of part 2, as we'll be covering the western portion of the Liurnia lakes with this guide. Every time I gotta fight myself from saying Lunaria. I mean, 200 plus hours inside of this, and you know, my mind, with all the moon references in this area, immediately thought it was just Lunaria every time. So it's Liurnia. I gotta force myself to say that at times. But over there on the left, we'll have, or next to that Lost Grace, we'll have another one of those vendors with nice cookbook and a couple of those early on smithing stones. Now from that point, we'll kind of head over to the eastern portion just a tad bit, just to make sure that we're kind of getting full coverage of this area. But we'll be heading over to the western side after we're done with this little area right here, since there's a large mass of land that we've got to come across with this Liurnia. I mean, it almost feels like this area is bigger than Limgrave or Caelid. Everything after this is a little bit smaller, lucky enough for me, at least for when we get to the Altus Plateau, we'll have a bit of an easier time to get that one crunched down. But just in the back corner there, we'll have another one of those dungeons, if you will, that we'll need to go on through. Going to be more than a few of those poison plants, and as you'll notice down on the ground below, it's going to be a lot of poison inside of here, which can definitely be a frustrating time, especially when you're just trying to make your way on through as quick as possible. But lucky enough, it's not as damaging as a Scarlet Rot. But inside of here, we'll get some Sage armor gear inside of here, something more fit towards a caster type of build, but nothing from the armor that's actually going to boost any of your main attribute points, like some of the other armor that you'll find later on, possibly out in Academy of RYA'S and other locations around here. But just past that, we'll start heading deeper into this cave. If you've got some of those, I forget what they're called, the little consumables that take off that poison damage, would be a good idea to kind of bulk up on some of those before going in here, since we've got so many of these flowers as well. You don't necessarily have to take these down, but at the same time, if you want a little bit more of that crafting material, it can be beneficial. I do skip past a couple of them. It's just not worth the time to keep beating them down at this point, considering I've got enough runes by this point. Not everything has to be completely destroyed. And I really just, I can't stand just beating down those flowers. Now this will connect back to where we were, but we'll need to drop down back to where that flower was and just keep heading deeper into the cave. And I believe we'll be just outside the boss room at this point. Going to be dealing with a bit more of those fungal warriors. Yeah, this is where it's going to be. Over here, a little bit of that poison grease, giving you a bit of poison damage added to your weapon if you'd like to use that consumable. I know I always forget about it. But this boss fight's going to be one of those clean rot knights. Not too hard to take down as compared to those crucible knights, which can be an absolute frustration. But from him, we'll get that winged sword insignia, which raises our attack power with successive attacks. So if you're somebody that's using a fairly quick weapon, constantly getting those hits in, that could be raising your attack power, just giving you that added DPS that you could use later on. Especially with dual wielders, you're going to have a ton of successive attacks with that one, unless you're just dual wielding, I guess, 2 great swords at the same time. But even then, I believe each of those attacks could be technically considered successive, and it could be something that ends up being a little bit more of that power. Now, we will have a whirlwind lift over here, but we won't be using that till much later, off into the part 2 of the guide itself. But from that point, we'll start heading over to the western portion, kind of heading along the ledge. And right over here is actually going to be the first map that we'll be able to grab up for this area. There's actually more than a few of them inside of this area. And I've done my best to go back and find those locations and make sure that we've got those in the guide. I know I didn't really do that too much inside of the Limgrave guide because I completely forgot about it since they aren't showing up anymore. I didn't have to grab them back up since it is New Game Plus. So that's one of those things that just kind of slips your mind in the moment. Now, I'll tell you right now, these enemy types right here that are just crawling on the ground, paraplegics, if you will, but them just dinging that bell and constantly casting those spells at you is absolutely frustrating. Even in New Game Plus, it's one of those things that just gives you that stagger moment. It may not be the most deadly thing, but it is an absolute irritation to deal with. And there's more than a few of them in this area. And there's also Mr. Handsy Bigger Boy over here as well. On top of that, it's just a whole mess inside of this zone that's just absolutely frustrating. But lucky enough, they are fairly easy to take down. But if you're a lower level, these guys could be a serious pain for you, especially Mr. Bigger Boy Handsy. But over here on the right, we will have a ritual pot to grab up. And over on our left, here in a moment, after I've taken a little looky-loo around, we'll have a portal in front of us that's actually going to get us to the front gate of the Academy of Ray Lucaria. So if you're possibly in a New Game Plus, this could be one of those things that gives you that little bit of speed advantage. Maybe you've arguably just run all the way to the door. Who knows? This is just something that can just skip you forward a little bit, get you to that Lost Grace, not have to deal with everything in between. You can just immediately get to that gate, especially if you've already gotten the Academy's Glintstone key. But from that point, if you've taken the portal, we'll take back to that Lost Grace that we just grabbed up and then start heading along the left wall or cliffside, as we're going to have a small little dungeon over here that will have a side quest at the end of it that we'll need to progress a little bit. That will be something that progresses forward into a later area with the consecrated snowfields. I'm telling you, these names always get me fumbled. It's like just trying to say Liurnia. I just want to say Lunaria. But inside of here, we'll have more than a few monkeys to deal with. Over here on the left, a couple of those bones, a little bit of that crafting material. Now, we're not going to jump down just yet. We will be heading down there in a moment, but there's still one more item on our left that we'll need to grab up. I believe this was a smithing stone on our right. I can't remember specifically. We'll have a bigger boy monkey inside of here, as well as some of the smaller monkeys. Yes, there will be a chest inside of here with the spear talisman, which is going to enhance our, is that counterattacks? I can't remember specifically. It's going to enhance our polearm ability or spear ability. If you're somebody that's using those types of weapons, that could be, or that would definitely be a solid talisman to choose for that type of build. But from that point, we'll start heading along that cliffside. Do keep looking over that edge. You definitely don't want to fall trapped to that moment where you just fall into your death. You know, we try to avoid being Tim the Tatman as much as possible, but every once in a while, especially in Elden Ring, it does get the better of us, and there will be a portion in this video where I'll make sure to let you know that fall damage was a real pain for me. But over here on our right, we'll be able to drop down, get a little bit of that cotton, and as well a few of those smithing stones down here, and I believe a somber smithing stone. No, it's going to be another one of those crafting materials. More than a few of those crystal snails down here. Do be aware of that. Not the worst ones to deal off with, but we will have a Bloodhound Knight inside of here. Can be a troublesome boss to defeat unless you've got that high stagger power and just absolute beefed out strength build. But from him we'll also get a medallion that's going to further increase our FPs, something that would definitely be beneficial for some of those casters out there to grab up. Now, just beyond the boss fight, without hitting that immediate exit to the front, we'll need to talk with this woman next to this wolf over here. She's going to be the starting point for that side quest I was talking about. Now, for her, we're going to need to grab up the HALIGTREE medallion, the one that gets us into the consecrated snowfield. We'll be grabbing that up here in a moment. We'll also get a rune arc, but you'll want to grab that Lost Grace. That way we can come back to this zone as soon as we grab up that item, because we will be getting the one half of that fairly soon here coming up in the video. Now from that point, over to our right we'll have another smaller side quest. Liurnia is full of side quests that really aren't the most beneficial, but more than a few of them are pretty hefty throughout the storyline. But this is going to be one that not necessarily is something that is really going to benefit you all that much. It's almost something that's more in the lines of kind of showing you which direction to go or giving you insight into what you're heading into later on, especially when it comes to the Volcano Manor. But with this one specifically, we'll just head straight left of her. We'll notice a little bonfire over here. We'll grab up the Lost Grace, and this is going to be the second location of Patches. If you exhaust all of his dialogue, he'll tell you about things in the Academy of RYA'S, as well as become a vendor. We've got a cookbook through him and a couple of those bloody fingers, as well as the stone sword keys. And you could actually buy up the Margot. I forget the name of it, but that one that the third item on the top row was something that we can use to kind of bind Margot, especially when we get to Lindell. Could be something you want to grab up now if you're just trying to make that fight a little bit easier on yourself. But just over to the east of his location, we'll grab up a Lost Grace and have a guy that's cooking up, he's got a lot of small lobsters inside of there, but essentially this is going to be the guy that's stolen the necklace from the girl that we just previously talked to at the, was it gazebo? I believe it was gazebo. I think I'm getting that right. Finally getting it right. Not calling it a gondola. But we'll buy up that necklace off of that guy and then be heading back to her in order to give it back to, or essentially just giving her back her possession. And then, after we progress through her dialogue, we exhaust that dialogue, give her the necklace back. We'll get almost like an invitation to the Volcano Manor. That's why I essentially think this is more of something that just kind of guides you in the right direction instead of being one of those major side quest lines. I'm not 100% certain on that. Probably should have done a little bit of research with it, but at the same time, I'm more going for the area guide loot with these type of videos and just checking out all the different locations that you can go through. Adding in those side quests, definitely a big benefit, but I'm trying to, or at a later date, make a full-on guide when it comes to the side quests, just based on the side quests, because I know instead of having to go through, an hour-long video, you'd rather go through something that's 15 or 20 minutes in order to just make sure that you're going through that side quest properly or the locations for it, and it's a bit easier to edit that way as well. But from that point, we'll start heading a little bit more towards the western side. There's a couple of items that we'll need to grab up, and over here is going to be one of those items that is definitely not worth your time. I was a bit disappointed by it. I think this is the second time I've grabbed it up, but we'll have more than a few monkeys to deal with over here. And by the end of it, all we'll get is a bit of broken glass shards. But from that point, heading over to the left, getting up on this cliffside over here, we're going to have more than a few of these fire enemies to deal with over here at this little camp. And a couple of those bats, always frustrating to deal with. But these guys are not exactly the easiest to deal with. They can get you in some stun lock positions, especially this one right here, the bigger boy with the mace. Can be a frustrating time. But on our left will be the Fire Monk's Prayer Book, which is going to give us another one of those incantations. I believe some type of fire ability once we bring it back to one of those teachers that'll give us the caster's abilities. But heading up along that cliffside, we're going to deal with a few more of those flame type enemies. Like I said before, it can be frustrating, especially that bigger boy one. If you let him get off some of those incantations, goodness, that's a stun lock you don't want to get stuck in. But heading up along this side, we're going to find more than a few of those little mini-men, those little toy soldiers as well, so do be on the lookout for them. They're going to be trying to trap you or grab you over. They can be an absolute frustrating time themselves, especially early game. But once we get past through all of them, I'd honestly just say don't even bother with them. Head straight past them, don't even worry about it. But at the same time, a little payback's always necessary for them. But at the end of this little cliff, we will have another one of those EVERGAOLs. Now, I'm trying to remember, was this one? No, it was not all that hard. This guy's a bit faster than normal, even though he looks like he's a little bit chubby, but pretty squishy at the same time. You will get a flame ability out of him. I believe he might have been one of the fire monks themselves, or considerably, there's something to do with the lore with some of these monks, considering some of them were at one time part of Lindell or the Golden Order, and then other ones have moved over to the Godskins, and Now there's also the ones that are for the, I forget, the Frenzied Flame. I believe that's what these are for. They've essentially just subdivided into each one of the different categories or other types of gods or belief systems within the lands between. But from that point, we'll be able to head up underneath this, what do we even call this? It's almost like floating rocks, but it is connected. Underneath this little mountain over here that's going to be shrouded in fog, and if you're not on torrent for this portion, you will be getting a lot of poison damage, so highly suggest keeping on torrent for that whole under portion. But before we head in, we'll need to head over to the right in order to grab up a Lost Grace. That way, in case we do end up dying or anything along those lines, or something troublesome, fall damage could happen at any moment, especially in a few spots up in the, or up under here, I should say. That way we don't have to travel too far in order to get back. As you'll notice, we'll start heading up onto this, what do you even call it? That's just another cliffside in my opinion, but some type of village, which does contain quite a few of those paraplegics up there. Goodness, they'll be all crawling for you, and you already know how frustrating they can be. But on our right side, we'll be able to grab up another one of those Lost Graces. And then up over to our left right here, there is going to be a quite irritating boss, or I shouldn't say boss, just another one of those NPC types that's very similar to the guy with the crossbow. He will be able to throw out some flame in front of him, can get stun locked pretty easy by him. So do be mindful of that guy coming up here. But over on our right, there is going to be a pot at the top of this little village area that is going to be basically an illusionary guy. Apparently he's not as harmful as the rest of the enemies, but you'll want to talk to him, exhaust his dialogue, and we'll be able to get the first half of the HALIGTREE medallion from this person. Now, this is the item that we'll need for the woman that was next to the wolf in that previous dungeon that we just came from. Lucky enough, we've got that Lost Grace, so once you're done talking to this guy, we'll be able to, is this not sped up? Well, sorry about that, guys. You know, sometimes you have a little bit of an editing error, but essentially we will be getting that HALIGTREE, and we'll need to head back to that woman next to the wolf in order to further progress that side quest line. But before we do that, we'll need to grab up one more item over here that seems to be hidden inside of this, I'm losing the train of thought here. The coffin. Now, it's going to be an ivory sickle, another type of dagger weapon. Probably not the best that you'll find throughout the game, but definitely something early on that may be beneficial for you, especially if you're going for that cast or melee type. But heading back to that woman, we'll need to exhaust the dialogue with her. We'll go through more than a few lines with her, and at the end of it, once we finally completely exhausted her dialogue, she'll say goodbye to her wolf and then dissipate into the air, and we'll actually get a summons for her character. Haven't tried it out yet. Could be quite useful. I believe this one may actually be one of those summons that has the sleep arrows. Could be pretty powerful for some of those boss fights later on. Now, from that point, we'll head back up, have to deal with that guy again. And then over to our left is going to be a bridge that we'll need to cross at the end of this. Again, we've got more of those irritating types, those little paraplegics. But we'll have a little mini boss fight over here. Nothing too dangerous, but he will be a flame type enemy. Do be aware there's going to be a couple of dogs as well. And we'll get a talisman off this guy that reduces the damage we'll take from impact to our headshots. Or impact and headshot damage, I believe, was something along the lines of it. I used it a fair bit. Don't really know how useful it really was. But early on, if you don't have too many talismans, that could be something that just gives you that added benefit to defenses that you may be lacking on in the very beginning, before you get some better talismans for whatever build you're running later on. But then we'll also head over to the left. Accidentally fell off, but at the same time we're going to need to head in this direction anyways. But we'll get a crystal sword before we get off of that cliff. Kind of progress on through from this point. And there is going to be one more scarab as we come down here. I'm trying to remember. We'll get a somber smithing stone out of that one. Now, from this point, I'm trying to remember if I went to the right or the left. We'll need to head back underneath that area, as we didn't really cover the ground before. There's a lot of crafting material when it comes to those lilies down here, so if you're really needing to bulk up on those, just head back down here, keep hitting that Lost Grace, they'll all respawn. You can get a giant surplus of them down there. Now from that point, we'll start heading up over to the further west portion, as there's going to be a rise over here with a Lost Grace in front of it. We'll grab that up. And then with this rise right here. We won't be able to get to the top of this tower from inside, but on our right we will have another one of those consumable items. But we'll need to jump up on the broken outer wall of this in order to get inside of the top of this rise. We'll just need to jump up over here. Now at the top here, you'll notice I get nothing in the chest. Simply put, it's going to be another one of those memory stones, something you can't get a duplicate of inside of the New Game Plus. Once you've grabbed it, it won't be spawning again, much like the maps in the area. But from that point, we'll head over to the left. I'm trying to remember if there was actually anything over here or if this is just connecting the gameplay footage. Yeah, that's correct. We'll just be heading up over to this minor Erdtree. We'll have another one of those Erdtree champions to deal with. Lucky enough, not all that irritating to deal with, especially since he doesn't have the Scarlet Rot buildup, but do be on your guard. He's definitely someone that can get you stun locked quite easily, as you'll notice, comically just smashing me into the ground like it's a Looney Tunes cartoon, but we'll be able to make quick work out of this guy in no time after, I'm not exactly playing at my best right here, as you'll notice, but we are still dealing some decent damage. Avoid that slam down. Do the run whenever he does the, I don't even know what to call that, just light spritzer. He's just for breezing with holy. But we'll get 2 crystal tiers out of him, which is going to be the ruptured crystal tier and the, I'm trying to remember the other one, but you can pause it right there to check out what you'll be getting. Essentially just going to be something that you'll be able to add to that wondrous flask. And a smaller golden rune just on the other side of that tree. But now we'll be heading back down and heading over to the left from this portion. And I believe we're going to go out into the lakes. I'm trying to remember this. Plenty of hours right here that I've condensed down and can't remember everything exactly play by play, I should say. But from this point, we'll head to this gondola over here. I believe there's going to be another smithing stone inside of this. We may also have lobsters outside of this. No, this is not one of them with the lobsters. Some of those gazebos are going to have lobsters outside of them. And if you've dealt with any lobsters, you know that's a painstaking fight right there, almost as bad as the bigger boy bear. But we'll also have that scarab back there, which will give us one of those, I believe it is an Ash of War, that will essentially give us blood loss on some of our weapons, or certain weapons that they can go up to. Now over here is going to be a Church of America that has some type of, I forget the name of it, but it's to do with the Moog dynasty with all the blood work over here. You'll have one of his smaller minions inside of it. Outside of this, you may see the white mask guy. If you don't see him, you'll need to head to the round table, talk to the two-finger lady and 2 fingers, then come back to that location. We'll be coming back to his location later on to do his side quest, and we'll be doing that to completion inside of the part 2. Now over here at this, goodness, almost said gazebo. We'll get another smithing stone, and there's a couple of those lobsters. You know how dangerous they can be. But we'll head back to the location where the guy was having the crawfish boil, as now he's going to have a couple of those boiled prawns that you can grab up for a little bit more of that defensives, or a consumable that raises your defenses, essentially. But from that point, we'll head a bit over to the right. We're going to kind of try and do a little zigzag in this portion to kind of cover this whole western portion. Bit irritating, but over here on our left we'll have another Lost Grace to grab up. You do want to grab that one up, that way we can get back to that location to do the side quest for the white mask guy. That'll be in part 2 at the very end of it. But over to our right, closer towards the Academy of Raya Lucaria, we will be facing off with one of those giant flowers that is by far the most frustrating one I've had to deal with. You know, it's bad enough that they can slam down on you and they spit out the poison gas or the scarlet rot gas, but when they just lift up and they've got homing missiles for a spell, it's, whew, I can't tell you how frustrating that can be. Lucky enough, it is pretty easy to avoid it, but if you get hit by one of them, and whew, it just keeps tagging you. That is, as a lower level, that is one that could be an almost instant kill. But over here we'll have another one of those gazebos, grabbing up another smithing stone, and then heading along that right wall. We'll have a bit of a broken down structure area over here that's going to have some of those frog people. The ones that don't have shirts on or don't have shields, yeah, they're going to be one to tussle with. Do be aware of that, and especially once they do their cartwheel attack, nothing seems to stagger them. Somehow they've got like the strongest poise in the game. Who knows how, but lucky enough, if you've got the strength for it, you'll be able to take them down fairly quickly, but some of them may still be able to push through your attack and get a good bit of damage in on you. Now over off to the left of them is going to be the Ice Rind Hatchet. You notice, or previously if you've been watching some of the speed runners, they use this weapon just about every time, getting that frost damage from it. It's an excellent weapon. I believe it may have been nerfed recently, but I don't think it got nerfed into the ground. Still something that could be pretty powerful if you're going for some type of frost build, or even just working with an axe. But over here on our left, we'll be able to, it gets a bit disorienting. Essentially, we're going straight out from that little broken down church section over there in order to get to that Lost Grace. And just in front of us is going to be a glintstone dragon. Now, you don't necessarily need to defeat this guy, but if you're going to try and get as many of those dragon hearts as possible to get some of those dragon abilities, this is definitely another one that can be useful for you. And if you've already been through Limgrave, and if you've got that talisman that further increases your attacks while on horseback, that's going to be an excellent thing to pop on before going into this fight. Gives you that little bit more of damage that you can just start knocking this guy down, just get up behind him, make fairly quick work of him, get that dragon heart. But just behind him is going to be the item that we'll need in order to get inside of the Academy of Lucaria, which is the Academy Glintstone key. That's going to get us through that blue gate, and we'll be able to, or we'll essentially need to use that a little bit later on just to get to another portion of the map. But now we'll come over to the right side, or left side of the Lucaria, kind of cliff side over here, and there's going to be a stone sword key dungeon essentially that we'll need to get inside of. Now down here is going to be the Academy Crystal Cave. We'll grab up that Lost Grace. There's going to be a couple of those magic users down here, a couple of those crystal snails as well, and a good bit of rats. But should be able to make quick work of them. But down inside of here, once we get into this area, a couple of those sorcerers inside of here, so do be aware of that. Use the crystals to your advantage to avoid some of those attacks, and good dodge rolls. But as we come in here, there's going to be a bigger boy sorcerer coming up on our left. Not this one just yet. Or before we head over to our right, there is going to be a stone sword key inside of here, kind of getting back what we put in order to get inside, so works out in our favor in that moment, especially if you're low on some of those stone sword keys. But now we'll be heading over to the right, deeper into the cave, and this is where we'll meet up with that bigger boy sorcerer over on our left. Now, I'd highly suggest taking out the one on the right. This guy is going to have that melee and caster ability to him, but lucky enough, we can make some decently quick work out of this guy. Now, there will be a guy above us. We can kind of just head over to the right, avoid his damage, but there is an illusionary wall just to the left before entering inside of here that we'll be able to grab him up from, and we'll get the crystal staff, which is going to give us the ability to further enhance some of our crystalline spells, I believe. Not sure how many of those are out there, but if you're going for that type of crystal magic build, could be fairly useful for you. Or any type of caster build, maybe if you're trying to switch it up, have the abilities. I wonder if you could dual wield staffs and get more damage. I'll have to look into that later. But inside of this boss room, we'll just have two of those crystal warriors. As soon as we get them cracked, it should be fairly easy. I'd highly suggest focusing on one before going to the next one, but we'll also get a spell out of those two. And just behind that, before we exit back to the front entrance, we'll have a lift that takes us technically inside of the Academy of Lucaria, but essentially we'll just be getting up to a tower to open up a chest and get, I believe, another weapon. No, it's going to be another spell. I believe a lightning type of spell. And from that point, we'll just need to double back to that boss room location and then take the exit to the entrance. And that lift ride is going to be quite long right there. It's a ways up there, I'll tell you right now. Even with this being sped up, it is taking quite a bit of time. But now we'll exit out of that dungeon and start heading over to the right, I believe. Yes, there's going to be a Lost Grace over here that we'll grab up, and then we'll be doubling back to the left. Now, before we head back over there, there is going to be one little, almost like an island on our right that we'll need to head up on top of, just to the right of that location where we grabbed up that Academy Glintstone key and where that dragon was. Now, technically, this scarab is one of those that portals. I thought it was one of those that disappeared. You could chase this one down, but lucky enough, we do have that Lost Grace pretty close by, so if you do end up having it just portal away and you can't find it, you can't just spawn back at that Lost Grace, have it come back, and then just bum rush it and hit it. But from that point, we'll be doubling back towards the left. There'll be a couple of dead monkeys over here for whatever reason. And we'll essentially be right underneath where that minor Erd tree was. Down here, there's going to be another secret type of dungeon. Along the way, we'll have another scarab with an Ash of War. More than a few bats. I'd highly suggest just kind of blazing through there unless you're just looking to amplify the rune amount that you need. Try to skip some of those levels or just further increase your levels overall. But down inside of here, we'll have more than a few of those gargoyles to deal with, or those little imps. Very frustrating. Funny enough, the boss lever is at the very front of this dungeon, but we'll also have some of that globe ward to pick up inside of here. I believe these are going to be level 3. We'll have 3 of those to grab up as soon as we walk in. Now, there's going to be more than a few of those illusionary walls in this one, so do be on the lookout for that. I believe I've gotten all of them, as you'll notice through the gameplay footage, pretty much rolling in every wall that I see from this point. Now, this one's going to lead us down into the boss room. Effectively, we'll have a couple of those illusionary walls to get through. There's going to be the boss room, but before we head into the boss, we're going to explore the rest of this dungeon firsthand. Now, just below, another one of those illusionary walls. I believe both of those walls can be taken down, and we'll also get the Watchdog Staff. Pretty decent damage on it. Not exactly something I would wield myself, considering I've got the Greatsword, but if you're looking to play around with a few different weapons, definitely an interesting one to try out. I believe it is another colossal weapon as well. Another globe ward on our right, back there on our left. A few more of those imps to deal with back here, and there is going to be another illusionary wall right here. Do be mindful, we've got 2 of those imps on either side. They will jump attack you, or try to sneak attack you essentially, but we'll get a summons outside of, or inside of this chest right here. Now we'll be doubling back to that boss room, trying to remember what the boss was. It's been quite some time. I don't believe it was another cat, but I could be wrong. That's correct. We're going to have the the snail that summons essentially right after we finish that first boss off. He may not always spawn in that right corner, but I believe the first time, I can't remember specifically whether or not it's randomized where he spawns, but as soon as you take out that first summons, you'll be able to get some damage in on him before he gets that next summon off. And do make it quick, otherwise you're going to have to deal with a whole nother boss fight before he reappears. Now from that point, we'll keep heading along the left coast edge. Now over here, if you did do the blind girl's quest back in Limgrave, this is going to be her father essentially that invades us, and we'll need to take him out, and we'll also need to take him out for the simple fact that he's going to give us another one of those Shabriri grapes that we'll need to feed that blind girl with, and we'll also get a fairly decent halberd out of him that's going to be a +8 when it comes to level. Something that could be extremely useful for somebody that's on their first playthrough or going through a new playthrough, looking for some type of weapon that's just going to give them that amplified damage that they need in order to make it on through, and a good bit of crafting material inside of that house over there. Now from that point, we'll keep heading along that left ledge of the cliff over here. And there's going to be an EVERGAOL just in front of us. Another one that's not too hard. I believe this one may also be, it's just going to be the troll itself. Definitely not too hard at all. You can just get this guy staggered pretty quickly as long as you're getting those attacks in early. I would say, be mindful of that every time that you come into the EVERGAOL. You've got that few seconds at the very beginning to get some serious damage in immediately. Sometimes that could be enough to just stagger them outright, bring them to their knees, and get a lot of that damage in pretty quickly. And then over here on our left, a little nice little side note, some of these singing bats, one of the ones that are the bigger boy version, those songs are apparently depicting some of the lore as well. And over here on the left, we will have another Lost Grace. But pretty interesting that some people have deciphered the language from that, gotten a bit more lore out of that. Check it out on YouTube. I know more than a few people have done some videos on that. But an interesting little tidbit that they added in with the game that comes along with those guys singing. But from that point, we'll head along the right side of this portion, as there's more than a few things on the other side of this little cliff side that we'll need to grab up before heading up to the top of it, which is going to be the 4 belfries. But over here, we'll have another one of those graveyards filled with all those golden runes. Can't have too many of those, especially even in New Game Plus. More than likely, there's going to be a few moments where, with as much as it costs to level up, you may be lacking on the amount when it comes to getting to a vendor trying to grab up some of those smaller items. Never can hurt to carry those just to have that little bit of extra that could possibly be going towards that next level or some type of vendor item that you need. But from that point, once we make it to the edge connecting up with that cliffside, we'll be heading back into this, and we'll have another one of those carriages to take down quite a few enemies with this one. So do be aware of that. One Knight Rider with him. Can't remember whether or not this one actually had a, or if I came back to this one at nighttime, and if there was a Knight Rider with it, there may be a Night. Interesting. A nighttime knight is what I should say. Something I definitely didn't think about until now, but I know not all of these carriages will have that nighttime knight whenever you come back to it, but would suggest possibly trying that out. Something I completely skipped my mind up until this point of watching it back over again. But by the time you finish off all these enemies, we'll be able to get to the back of that carriage. I'm trying to remember what it was. I believe it was a mace. Maybe no, it's going to be a type of straight sword that actually does some magic damage with it. So if you're going for something of an intellect build with that melee as well, that could be one of those really beneficial weapons to grab up early on as well. But over on the left side, we'll have that somber smithing stone to grab up from that guy in the chair, as well as dealing with some of those more than frustrating enemy types. But heading back up, we'll have some of these, I believe it's the Carian Knights, or Carian's Armor, Elite Soldiers, There's so many different versions of these knights that are just in different color schemes, it's hard to remember each one of their name types, but I believe this is the Carian soldiers, essentially. Now over here we will also have another one of those pumpkin heads to deal with as we're coming up on the top. Sometimes they can be irritating, but other times he doesn't seem to do his headbanging motion, lucky enough for us. But over here up on top, those shaggy dogs, I'm telling you, can be very frustrating, and do be mindful of your health bar. Problematic scenarios can occur. There's nothing more frustrating than dying to just a common throwable spell type before even making it to the night. But lucky enough now, we make quick work out of those knights with this greatsword. But over on our right, we'll have two chests to open up, one with a smithing stone and the other with I'm just going to say blood clot. I can't remember what that first word was, and I'm just not even going to attempt it right now, but from that point, we'll keep heading up over to the left. We'll notice there's a lot of those astral projection trolls over here, very similar to the ones that we see alongside with some of those bell tower turtles, or the ones that are the smaller soldier types. Now, you don't necessarily have to take out each one of these, but there's a couple of jellyfish on our left. We'll just keep close to that left cliffside over here and make our way all the way up to the top. It's going to be another one of those astral projection trolls up here, so be aware of that. You will need to take him out, otherwise he's going to chase you all the way up to the top, or at least I believe so. I just make sure that nothing's going to be chasing me all the way up there. But from that point, we'll be up at the 4 belfries, which is going to be essentially 3 different portals that will need imbued stone sword keys in order to gain access to them. Now, I will not be doing a guide on each of these 3 different locations, but we will get an imbued stone sword key at the very top. Biggest reason why I'm not doing the guide on them, one, it's very simple and straightforward. You just utilize it on that. It goes to a very small select location, not too many secrets to it. One of them just travels back all the way to the first location that we came into inside of the game to get revenge on that first boss. And the third one goes to the Far Missoula. The other one is, I've already covered inside of the Shifa River guide as well. But we'll grab up that Lost Graves up top there. And at the same time, we'll have to go to other locations to get those imbued stone sword keys. So I don't have all of them right here, so definitely not something I can cover inside of this guide, but again, pretty straightforward. Now heading back down that cliff, we'll need to head along that left side. We're going to need to grab up another Lost Grace over here on our left, and do be aware that we are pretty close to that cliffside. Almost had an oopsie moment right there and fell over the edge, but up here on our left, we'll have the Lost Grace, and we'll have the next map for this location guide. Just over to our left right here. And just up ahead of us is where we're going to find the, I can't remember the name of these ruins, But essentially there is going to be another one of those illusionary floors that we'll need to kick out over here on the right side. A couple of the smaller caster type enemies, a good bit of wolves over here, and a couple of those magical traps. So you'll notice over here on the right hand side of this ruins, this is where the illusionary floor is going to be. We'll have a mini boss fight inside of here with that bigger boy handsy guy. Not too difficult to take down, but this guy can always be a frustrating fight to deal with. Especially if he just gets you in that stun lock. Goodness. But just behind that, we'll be able to grab up another type of frost weapon, which is going to be a thrusting sword. Not too sure how powerful this weapon can be, but it's something definitely that's piqued my interest in trying to work around a build with it. I've seen so many people use that frost axe, but I haven't really seen too many talk about that one, so something I may be looking into a little bit later on. But at the very back end of those ruins, there'll be an illusionary illusionary wall at the entrance to the Caria Manor. And over on our left side, we will have E.G. the Blacksmith, which is going to have a couple of those somber smithing stones that we can grab up, especially the level 1 and 2. I think they're infinite on those two. Would highly suggest grabbing up a few of those. Those can be extremely beneficial, especially when you're looking to upgrade some of those rarer type weapons that already have those special ability on them. Or I believe it's only legendary weapons that require the somber smithing stone. But I've already done the Caria Manor guide. If you'd like to check that out, I have that linked down in the description below, but we won't be covering that inside of this Liurnia guide. But heading back into the lake area over to the right, we are going to be coming over to an island with another rise on top of it. Now this one, we will need to activate the puzzle that we're going to be needing to solve in this location by communicating with that little gargoyle imp statue with the book. Then it'll give us all the illusionary enemies that we'll need to take down. At the very back, there will be one up a tree, so you'll need some type of ranged either spell or weapon in order to take that one down. Then another one over to the, I guess it depends which side of the rise you're on, but left if you're facing the rise and over to the right if you're behind it. Now there will be another one that's just off down by the cliff, and this is going to be the third and last one that we'll need to hit in order to open up this rise so we can gain access to that next memory stone. Now from that point we'll have access, and sadly enough I wish some of these rises actually came with spells or a little bit more loot and not just another memory stone, but at the same point, I mean, another memory stone can't hurt, especially if you're some type of caster build, or maybe you're just looking to do that later on after you've respec'd Evernola. But from that point, we'll go back down the back side of the little rise island. Now there'll be a bit of lightning over here to the left, good bit of crafting material, but over here there's going to be a bit of a broken down structure, almost like a overpass, that's going to be filled with a lot of those little egg creatures. Now the loot that you find down here, I would highly suggest not even going in here. It's not worth it. It's another old fang. We can find those all over the place. These guys are extremely devastating. That poison gas not only is afflicting you with the poison, but it's constantly doing a damage over time the longer you're inside of it. As you already noticed, I got heftily stun locked while I jumped in there, and it's no joke when it comes to that damage. I had to get my runes back, and from that point we're out of here. We are not dealing with that anymore. That's absolutely frustrating. But up on top of the broken down structure itself, I believe there may have been one item. No, we'll be skipping that one altogether. But do be aware of those eggs. In large clusters, extremely frustrating. Now heading back to the left along that cliffside just below Caria Manor, we'll be dealing with more than a few of those smaller hands, and there will be one bigger hand over here. First we'll come up on this little bit of raised portion that's going to have a bit of that legendary crafting material, purple crafting material. But just down below from that, there is going to be another crystal tier in a dish. There will be a big hand lying right next to it that's kind of underneath the surface, just kind of, attack right next to its fingertips. You'll be able to spring that trap, essentially, and be able to take it down a lot quicker than you would have if you just ran over it. Some things you learn along the way. But heading along that left cliff side, we'll also come across another somber smithing stone, and we will be grabbing a lost grace over here, but not heading down in this direction. This will actually be the ending point for the guide itself over in part 2 once I've got that one all edited out. But from that point, we'll continue along that cliff side, just keeping pretty much making that U-turn at the very top or northern portion of the Liurnia lakes. Now there will be a bit of grease over here, but more than a few of those crabs going to be popping up. Do be on the lookout for that. You know how frustrating those crabs can be. And then we'll head back along the cliffside, constantly moving forward. There is going to be one more thing to grab over here on the left-hand side, I believe, which is going to be, I can't remember if this is consumable or it's possibly some type of crafting material. I can't remember about that lump of flesh. But from that point, we'll get over to this section over here, which is going to be the broken bridge that connects with Academy of Raya. Over on the left-hand side, there is a scarab. I will be showcasing it a little bit later in this gameplay footage, but just off to the left of this Lost Grace, if you want to just go ahead and grab that right now. Just one of those moments where you forget about it, and then later on, later in the gameplay footage, you come back and remember it's there when grabbed it up. But again, if you want to wait until that moment, sure, fair enough. But heading along towards the Academy, or right after that Lost Grace, heading towards the Academy wall or cliffside itself, over here, we'll head up on top of this raised section, head over to the left, and there's going to be a stone sword key over here. Pretty much the only loot that you're going to want to grab from that section right there. Nothing else to really pick up, just a handful of enemies here and there with a bit of crystals strewn about that ends up not having any loot, sadly enough. But doubling back all the way in the other direction along that bridge just past the Lost Grace, we'll have that somber smithing stone, and then we'll also have one of those bell tower turtles, which probably the most frustrating one to take down inside of the game, in my opinion. This one eats up a lot of time. You think you'll be able to jump across to it from the whirlpool that was back there on the left. I tried multiple times just kind of waiting for it to get a bit closer, then hitting the whirlpool, trying to get close enough, and every time you're just kind of just short of it. But you'll notice it starts to walk towards the cliff on our left, essentially. So what we'll have to do is go back up on top onto the cliff itself and then wait, good lord, I don't know how many minutes it was. But do be careful when trying to get this done. But you'll notice, I mean, multiple times I just kept trying to jump up on top of this thing, and it just short every single time. Absolutely frustrating. So what we'll do is we'll jump up onto this cliff. We'll have to get up on top of some of these hanging tombstones on the left side. You'll want to jump down off to the left. Do be careful with this. Obviously, it would be extremely frustrating to have to go back to a Lost Grace and then wait the entire allotted time for this thing to walk over. As you'll notice, this is 500% increase on the speed of the gameplay footage itself, and this is still going extremely slow. This is how slow it's going to be. You're going to have to wait on this lower tombstone for quite a while before it actually gets over to you. I mean, it's going at a snail's pace, and apparently, I mean, this is about the only way I can figure out how to get on top of this, as down at the legs you won't be able to take it down. All of the skull, I don't even know what to call them, skull soul things attached to the side of it as its lifeline. You'll have to just wait till it gets close enough, and do wait until it gets close enough, because you're not going to survive that jump if you miss that. And I would arguably say wait till it gets as close as possible. In that moment, I was just kind of judging whether or not it was close enough, and thankfully it was. But it doesn't take too many of those skull things to take down in order to actually get it down onto its knees. By all means, definitely not something you necessarily have to get done this time going through. You know, you could just get past that and go to the dungeon that's just off to the left along that left cliff face. But if you're looking to have another one of those remembrances, that's going to be one of the most frustrating ones to obtain, or at least time consuming. But once we get into this dungeon, we'll have a couple of keynote items inside of here, as well as another somber smithing stone over on the right as soon as we come in. Then also do remember to check those walls pretty thoroughly. There is going to be a few of those smithing stones hanging off of them. Not up at the top here, I believe, or there will be one across here. Do be careful right here. More than a few gaps in between these little jumps right here, and I believe that is a death fall right there. But we will be getting a smithing stone and somber smithing stone from making that little jump puzzle right there, or platforming, I should say. Now we will have a lift on our left. We won't be able to access it yet. We'll have to dig down deeper into this dungeon before we gain access to that. More than a few of those crystal miner type enemies, and a couple of them have the sorcery ability to them, so be on the lookout for that. Not exactly the most damaging in the game, but still can be that frustrating moment, especially if you haven't been checking your health bar. You're just kind of rolling through. Another smithing stone on our left hanging on the wall. Like I said, you always want to keep an eye out on those walls. This one's a bit easier to see some of those smithing stones hanging out, considering everything isn't just like a yellow wall from all the lighting from fire. But another smithing stone on our left. Now from that point we'll be able to take an elevator down, but don't take the elevator, jump off to the left. There is a couple of keynote items that we can grab up. A lot of times I would say, we'll have another somber smithing stone right there. Anytime you see some of those elevators inside of these dungeons, it would be a good idea to jump off to the left side of it if there's any type of I guess flooring that you can see just below you, or little platforms that you can jump down to. There's sometimes a lot of hidden items down there, generally smithing stones or possibly some golden runes that you could be missing by just taking that lift down. But as you'll notice, we'll essentially get back to the same point that we would have gone anyway if we had taken the lift, but we would have been missing out on that smithing stone. There'll be another smithing stone just off to the right, just behind that miner, and off to the left. And that'll be the lift that heads us all the way back up to the top. And do be aware there is one more smithing stone just down below that little platform right there. Now there will be a couple of whirly blade guys in here, and a couple of them will be archers. Another smithing stone in the back, so do be aware of that. Those can be quite frustrating, especially if they get off on their, I guess their special ability where they just start twirling. But inside of here we'll actually get the crystal knife, which is going to be a magic damage dagger. Could be pretty solid for some of those guys out there that are looking for that caster / melee build. Not really looking for something that's too heavy, but also gets that amplification from their intelligence. Now, after we've taken down the bigger boy and the little sorcerer guy, we'll have 3 of them right here, which pretty hefty amount of smithing stones right here. 3 regular and 1 somber smithing stone. This is actually a pretty decent loot cave, or dungeon, if you will, to get some of those smithing stones early on, just to get a good bulk of them, or possibly get that next upgrade that you needed in order to get your weapon up, especially early on in game. But over to the left we'll also have another one of those magical spells that we'll be able to pick up. And then we'll be heading down into the final area. Like I said before, you really do want to jump off to the left of most of those elevators, try to find if there's any platforms down there to jump onto, as we would have definitely missed out on another somber smithing stone right there, and another one on the left before we get into this boss fight. Lucky enough, not one of the harder bosses in the game. This one should be fairly easy, even for people on their first playthrough possibly, or early leveled one, but we will be getting a smithing stone bell bearing at level 1, so that way we can take that back to the 2 women down at the round table and essentially be able to buy them up infinitely from those 2 women at the round table. Makes it a bit more convenient, and if you're ever in one of those moments where you just need another 1 or level 1 smithing stone, you don't have to either go to New Game Plus and go back through Limgrave or some of those, obscure locations. It's just much nicer to be able to not have to go and seek out what 1 level smithing stone you haven't picked up through one of those earlier areas and just head back to the round table instead. Be able to buy it up with some runes. But from that point we'll continue maintaining along that left portion of the or that left side of the Liurnia lakes. Swear, keep trying to say Lunaria, but it's not. Now this portal is actually one that you don't necessarily need to take. It's actually going to portal us back to the location where that map was on the western side of Liurnia, or next to that map, and the Lost Grace that we've already gotten. Now this is going to be the gameplay footage of that scarab that I was talking about that was just off to the left of the Lost Grace before, that we didn't pick up earlier. It is one of those that does teleport, but we will get a nice shield Ash of War ability out of that. Now we'll just be heading back to that portal itself. Pretty much a straight shot right across the lakes itself. Not too far away from us inside of that gazebo, and then we'll be heading into the town in front of, or the broken downtown, in front of the Academy of RYA'S. Now we'll be back at the portal. I thought about just cutting out that footage, but at the same time I wanted to show you exactly where it was going to go, where it was going to lead you essentially. And lucky enough, it was one of those moments where I had completely forgotten that there was another scarab back there, and we were able to grab that up. Now, not much to be found inside of this little broken down town. There will be a couple of items that I will be showcasing in part 2 from this town, considering this is going to be the stopping point for us. We'll get the Lost Grace and the map from this location, as well as that golden seed back there. And then we'll be cutting the footage there, saving the rest for part 2, obviously. Not trying to make these videos too long than they already are. But obviously it's a good halfway point. Should be part 2 only about an hour, hopefully not too much longer, but I'll fit everything, or the rest of it essentially, from the western portion of Liurnia Lakes into that one. But that's going to be the Lost Grace and the map. I believe that is the final map for this area as well, so you'll have everything uncovered for yourself, just in case you want to continue on do that exploration, if you're just rolling through the guides, I suppose. But on that note, if you'd like to check out some of this content live, hit that link down in the description, follow me over at Twitch, and if you'd like to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed. We'll have that part 2 coming here in the next day or so, and have a good one.